You're listening to Beyond the Buy with Alissa, Menke, and Angie, Grau.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Buy. Today we are talking about live media. Live media is sort of this big word. Explain a little bit about what live media is.
Sure. So live media is going to be those instances where it is as if like you were there. It's happening in real time. So whether that's professional sports, collegiate sports in general, right? So
Yeah.
sports, but then you have things like award shows or like the singing programs.
Oh,
that
I
have the
hadn't
live
even thought of
entertainment.
those.
Yeah. So those types of kind of live entertainment as well as your live news.
Yeah. And why is live such an important thing for advertisers to think about as they're putting together their media plans?
Yeah, so a live media opportunity is going to give you like broad reach. You're going to be able to tap into a large group of people, and it's like it's happening now. So there's
Yeah.
almost like this sense of urgency that happens with it. You have that captive audience that, if you have something that requires action immediate, you can kind of communicate that with them. But the big thing is you get that broad reach, you have the captive audience, and they really, in certain situations, especially with sports and with kind of the live entertainment, there's this sense of community that comes with it too.
Oh, sure.
You can really tap into. I'm sure I'm missing something. Yeah, so live, a way to kind of get in front of a lot of people at one point in time.
Well, and the thing that I think, like you would maybe categorize everything as it's going through linear TV for the first time as live, right? Like kind of.
Yeah.
Even though it was truly taped months or years prior. But those things, like, do people still like TiVo or record or watch them later on their streaming service whenever it fits into their day or their week?
Yeah.
But you don't see that with news. Like I don't sit down and catch up on the day's news, whenever I have free time.
Yeah.
And I also don't do that with sports because I have inevitably already seen the headline that tells me that Texas Tech lost yesterday in the Women's World Series softball. I'm only a little upset about it, but I'm trying to get over it. Mostly because I feel like I missed out on that moment because somehow or another I didn't realize the game was on.
Yes. Yeah, that is a big part of why people do tune in to things like live sports, because we inevitably at this day and age, like it's not like the old days where we could be like, la, don't tell me, I'm going to go home and watch it later. Like by this point, everybody's posted about it on social media. You are going to find out one way or another before you have the opportunity. So it does increase that urgency as viewers, as fans, that you want to watch it live, as it's happening so that you can be part of that conversation and not be kind of trailing in behind.
Well, and so the same thing kind of works for advertisers as well. Like when you are advertising or a sponsorship, particularly women's sports right now, there's this whole moment of you want to be that brand that's sponsoring those games and supporting women athletics because it is the hot thing right now. Lots and lots of eyeballs are on all of these amazing female athletes. But also, like, there's just sort of this extra prestige that comes when you have a spot that plays during the news or, the Super Bowl or whatever that live event is.
Yeah.
That gives, I'd say, a level of credibility that you don't get just like when your spot's on during The Price is Right.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There is just a different kind of viewing experience during those opportunities, or listening. If it's on radio, you're fully kind of bought in, and you almost unintentionally or subconsciously connect those brands like with that entertainment or with that athletic event.
Yeah.
And with the news, for sure, it increases your credibility because people are tuning in at that time. That's kind of where they're at in their own headspace. And so they're coming from it. They're seeing those ads from that lens.
How do live sports, live entertainment, live news each offer something a little bit different? So you just talked about how news adds to credibility.
Yes, for sure. And they're all a little bit different. So even if they're all live, it's going to be, like I said, they're consuming that content differently and under a different lens. So when you're watching the news, you're there for a pretty specific reason. You want to hear about what's going on, especially the local news. You want to know what's happening within your community.
Yeah.
And then when you're following your sports teams, a lot of time that's your fandom. It may have been like how you were raised. Like my dad was, and my mom, like Nebraska Huskers was where it was at. That's the only we watched Nebraska Huskers. My dad also was professional sports wise. It was the Twinkies, the Twins. Yeah.
That's funny.
The Minnesota Vikings. So like those were the games that I remember, or like golf. A lot of golf.
Oh my. It sounds like a nap for me.
Like it builds in your family. It becomes just like a part of your
Yes.
kind of familial subculture, if you will. So you're coming at it from this like almost joyful, maybe sometimes not with
Yeah.
doing
Oh, yeah.
have to watch kind of experience. And then when it's live entertainment, it's just like different personalities and different perspectives and different goals with each of those and who's watching and what your intent is. Some of it's like, I just want to know what's happening in, pop culture and what's happening
Yeah.
in movies and I don't watch any of those award shows or whatever. And
Mhm.
sometimes I will watch the singing shows like The Voice and,
Oh, sure. I didn't even think about those as being live entertainment, but
mix, right?
yeah, like the vote now.
The vote. That's it. I just fast forward to, I just want to hear him sing. That's like, I just want to hear him sing.
That's
Some terrible viewers. I don't mind missing out, but lots of people
so yeah.
want to watch the
They're-
lineup because
They're very vested in whoever their favorite singer or performer is.
and the show has done a really good job at forcing you, right? Because there's only a certain amount of time that you
Sure.
can get those votes in. So they do a good job with those live shows to really help increase the viewership during those times because those vested individuals will go in for that. So they're each their own thing, and each of them should be very much treated that way. Your goal and then deciding, yes, news is going to be the good place for us is going to be very different from looking at your goals and your strategy and saying, oh, we want to be with live sports. So different intentions behind each
Yeah.
of those because different audiences.
Sure.
Use
Well, and
each
there
of them.
could be some crossover for sure. Like for instance, in our market, even if your brand doesn't maybe necessarily align with sports, it like if you're in the Topeka neck of the woods, you're going to have a really strong KU and K-State following. So you might have, placements during those particular sporting seasons. However, like this year, like it's been kind of rough for local collegiate sports. They've not had their best years, and fans are a little bit, I think, not down and out, but certainly at points in times, that was the vibe on social of like, it's the worst. But I think that even when they aren't feeling like, riding that high of the winning season, there's still that connection of like, you're supporting my school. But especially on like, again, the women's sports side of things, the messaging that you can place alongside, of that inclusiveness and really supporting women athletes and the diversity there, I think is something that is just sort of the hot trend that makes so much sense. And a lot of brands have really worked hard to align themselves with that.
Yeah.
How should advertisers decide whether live media is actually worth their investment?
As always, goals and strategy. When you have that media strategy in place, it's going to really help guiding you. One thing that comes up a lot especially with live sports, especially like Super Bowl, and we've kind of talked about this before.
Super Bowl.
Sometimes if you are a big fan, you want to align yourself and you're like, yes, I went to KU. I want to have all the KU games. And that might not be what fits best into your strategy. Sometimes it's like they get excited about the opportunity, or it's like, yes, that would be so cool to be on the Super Bowl, but it may not actually align with goals, with budget, or really with the audience that they need to be reaching. So really paying attention to the strategy and knowing really well who it is that you want to reach. Because yes, live TV, what's so great is it does tend to reach like this it spans the kind of spectrum.
Yeah.
As far
All kinds of
individuals want to-
demographics and
Yes, because-
interests and
Yes. So, a KU fan could be a lot of different personalities and a lot of different
Yeah.
types of shoppers and, business individuals and whatnot. So it does have that breadth, that reach. But it's really making sure that it is for sure going to align with your goals of the campaign, your intentions, the
'Cause-
excitement can sometimes just take over.
Yeah. Well, because in the grand scope of things, live placements, I mean, they're more on that higher end of
Yes.
that buying spectrum in terms of cost.
Absolutely. Yes. Live TV, because it does garner such a large
Big
audience.
audience, yeah.
Your news spots are typically going to be some of the most expensive when you're doing, media buys. Definitely the live sports, but there are some really cool packages and things that you can work out as long as it does
Yeah.
make sense for your overall strategies.
So it makes sense that you're buying based off of your goals and your target audience, not your sense of ego of being like, oh,
Yeah, or even just like, that
we've got a spot on the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Sometimes what's cool is not what's best for you.
What are signs that something isn't really the right fit and that maybe you are letting your ego push you a little too far down the line?
That's a really good question. I think budget is a big thing that you have to look at. You want to make sure that you are within that framework. And because it is more expensive, placing in these live situations could take away from some of your other maybe potentially more profitable placement.
Well, and you could get so much more frequency if you're not wrapping it all up in that 1 30-second during the Super Bowl. I mean, even like obviously when you talk about a Super Bowl ad, you think of the like $8 million for the national placement. But there's also a handful of regional placements. And while they're not $8 million, they are still big for the market. The other thing that I like for us when we are sitting down to watch the Super Bowl, it is really obvious when you take the shift to the local commercials because the production value drops a lot. And so I think that that's one of those things that you always kind of want to keep in the back of your mind of like, maybe you don't have sort of the like Lexus brand placement if you're rocking like the old VW Bug creative, right? Like some of that time, sometimes you need to have those things align.
Because it does make it stand out and maybe not in the way that you want it to stand out. And I do think too, I mean, obviously knowing your audience, because if you have a specific person or type of person, I mean, we even talked about this with some radio stations do live coverage of high school games, especially in rural areas. And when we're looking at it from a perspective of who we're looking to attract, like, oh, yeah, that's great because athletically, that's what we want. However, we're like, oh, but the people we want might be attending the game
or playing in the game.
Or we're going to reach these X thousand individuals, but we only needed these 50. And so it's like, okay, for what we're spending, we're getting this, but we really need this. And then making sure like, is that really worth it?
Well, you bring up a really good point because as we've been talking about live media, I have like 100% been chugging down the TV track. Didn't even think about radio, right? So and maybe that's another like facet of your discussion is maybe you can't afford, TV spots during the Chiefs or the Royals game. But maybe that's where radio comes into play because it's going to be a little bit more affordable. Still gives you pretty wide coverage and reach. There are still a lot of folks that are listening to a game. Quite frankly, I really enjoy listening to a Royals game. I like watching them, but
you can't sit still that long.
That's what I was going to say. Is it's really hard for me to sit still to watch a game. And so being able to listen to on the radio is like, in my opinion, the perfect approach. And so those ads also still have a really good impact without the big expense from a production standpoint, but also just generally the placement expense.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
And I think too with radio, I feel like we've talked about this at some point, whether in previous episodes or just in life. certain people connect with certain voices, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
the voice of the Chiefs, or,
Oh,
like there's
sure.
a certain announcer who they just enjoy listening to. And I know I've mentioned my dad, he will watch, the Twins on the TV, but he has it muted and then he's listening to the radio
Yeah.
for his announcers who he prefers. And so that's also something. Oh, now even with the streaming options, so much of live sports is kind of, they've started doing some of the streaming. And I'm thinking, I know a lot of people, older generations in particular, they just are like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it's not on just like regular broadcast?
Oh, yes. No, it is so frustrating. And you'll see people post on Facebook, like, where can I find the game?
You're like,
Because,
Amazon,
yeah,
Hulu Live,
yeah.
Netflix,
And they're like, that's not fair. I don't have that.
yeah. And so like you'll have some of that where they're just going to listen, to the radio as well. So definitely something to consider. And in just some areas that's you're going to tune in on the radio.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that advertisers have about live sports, live entertainment, and live news?
Oh man, biggest misconception. You kind of hit on it earlier. While the spots may be limited in some of these situations for local, there is, I think, this idea of if I see an ad during the Super Bowl, for example, that is national. These are national brands, national companies, or international even. But there's specific inventory set aside in broadcast, TV, and radio for local and regional advertisers as well. So not being afraid to ask, like just thinking, oh, I could never be on the NCAA tournament, or I could never be, on whatever. And so just knowing that there's going to be opportunity, there's going to be, some inventory, but get in front of it, because a lot of times they will have a contract with somebody and they have first right of refusal.
Yeah, those are pretty highly coveted positions because, to your point, there's only a limited amount of inventory that's given, to local or regional placements.
Yes. And then as we've harped on the whole time, biggest, audience isn't always.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes all the eyeballs in the world don't matter because
they're not the right.
They're not the right folks.
Yeah. So just, keeping in mind what your messaging and your goals are, making sure that you go about it the right way. Definitely just have to have a plan, because it is easy, especially because we say limited inventory. So you get a call from your rep and they're like, hey, we've got a spot open for, this year's Chiefs games. You're like, yes, I want to get that. But you really got to,
It does
that, and just make sure it fits the plan.
It does seem like those situations are always sort of high stakes, like, oh, you've got to act fast and you've got to make these decisions. And it's not just on like the end brand, that pressure is also on your media team, because we understand that those are limited spots and that sales rep likely did not just call me. Unless I represent several clients that are going to potentially say yes, they're not going to, hedge all their bets just on the ask to me. And so if I can't act quickly, then I'm going to likely miss out.
Yeah. Which then you kind of feel like it's going to force your hand, like you have to do it, but you really got to take a beat and just make sure it fits the plan, because it's going to be a big expense.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure that you're putting those dollars in the right place.
We're going to shift over to a little new option, or a little new ending here. We've got rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What do you think matters more in live media? The big reach or the attention that audience brings for that very moment?
Attention. We really want to make sure we're getting the actual attention of said people.
Because those folks are not as likely to fast forward through commercials because they can't. Which is best for cultural relevance of the three options: entertainment, music, or not music, sports, news?
That's such a hard one, because I'm leaning towards entertainment, but also sports, because they both have their own culture around them, because you might have, like, I have friends who are diehard sports fans, but they're going to tune in for the Grammys. They're going to tune in for the, some of that pop culture side.
Yeah.
I just don't. or any of it.
I would say in generalities, I would probably agree with live entertainment. But like in our household, I pay for ESPN 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Once during women's volleyball, during like the run up to the NCAA tournament. And then once again, this time of year where, I mean, if I'm not on a field watching my children play softball or baseball, I'm at home watching someone else's children play softball or baseball. And I am invested in these girls and that backstory. This year's particularly exciting on the baseball side because the Jayhawks are actually like still in it and playing from home. I've watched hours of sporting content that and know the backstories on these players. So for our family, like that is our like cultural pull, but
And
also we're sort of weird.
well, it's all kind of regional. It comes down to knowing your audience as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like in Kansas, we have the 2 big universities. You got K-State, you have KU, and then we have some great,
Lots of
Victoria, Wichita. We've got lots going on in terms of universities and athletics. And then we have the Chiefs and the Royals are right here. But my family's all from Nebraska. And so really Nebraska, I mean, they're wonderful. The whole University of Nebraska systems, Kearney, Lincoln, Omaha, great. But really it's the Huskers, right? Like that is what they have. They don't have professional sports teams.
Yeah.
And so it is like my grandma prays for the Huskers. Like,
yeah.
And
no, that's
they're
true.
very invested in those individuals because that's really who
that's what they've had. Yeah, that's what they've had the opportunity to really like follow.
And born and bred Nebraskans, like Huskers is just a big part of your life and kind of that identity.
Okay.
Not everybody.
That's what I was going to say. So, all right. Well, I take my answer back. I'm going to vote for the live sports because that really does sort of, I had assumed that ours was live sports because that's what we have grown up playing, what's what our children play. But you're right. I know a lot of people that are giant sports fans that don't actively play, which in my mind feels a little bit like, okay, whatever. But they're giant, Yankees fans and they live in Kansas. Like, what? But that's because that's the way they were raised. They're giant Cowboys fans. Like,
yeah, it is. And it becomes like a big, and it's a part of that personal identity.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So it's, definitely, I think the pop culture type events, but man, there's just something about, and we're talking obviously about like the bigger, football, basketball things you hear about, but it even goes to like my husband tunes in and watches these live paintball events when they happen.
Don't even know those things existed.
Yeah. And so, and for many, they probably don't, but he'll get it and then he'll stream it because it's not going to be like on live broadcast television. But for those people who it's been something he's played since high school, and so he's played at some point with these guys who have ended up.
Oh, wow.
And he gets into it the same
I bet.
Then, that I would watch in Nebraska football. So it's, everybody kind of has their thing.
Yeah.
And knowing your people and knowing that thing, that kind of subculture that they might be a part of is going to be a great way to identify which live opportunities would make the most sense.
What do you think about for local advertisers? Where's their best investment?
So like for consistency and for frequency, I would say television news. I would say the news, just because it is, and it's embedded in local in and of itself. And so, you're going there to get weather or local updates or what have you. So that's a great opportunity to get in front of broad reach and be able to do that with some frequency as well. Not saying you shouldn't do the other words, but just for that consistency piece, news is always a good one to look at.
Final rapid fire. Live. Is it always worth it?
Not always. Like we've talked about with the Super Bowl. Man, how much could you have done with that budget, right?
Yeah.
So, and especially if it's what could you have done with that budget and had it look good, because, it's not going to necessarily be at the same level unless you're willing to put all that money into high production. which is, again, more money into this one opportunity that you could have extended for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I think my like sort of parting thought is if you're going to make that investment in sort of the one-time placement, whether that's the Super Bowl, the Oscars, the whatever, where you see all the major brands roll stuff out, part of what makes those successful is that isn't really the only place they've invested money and time, right? Especially nowadays, they've built on social, they've built this story and they've built tension. Now the ad's out, it's being covered by, folks all over the industry. It's placed in other places. Like there's just a lot of like supporting ad dollars, but also like at this point, PR dollars that have gone into things so that it wasn't like I shot my shot and it was what it was. It was like I played this whole game and that was like the big shot, but there's all sorts of other support that's gone around it.
Yeah. And that brings up a good topic. We didn't really talk about it so far. So making sure that this campaign or whatever you're running with your live sports, that it's not just doing some live sports or doing some news, that it is part of a comprehensive campaign.
Yeah.
So you do have your digital layers on there as well, so that it's not just the kind of one and done. As with most campaigns, we're almost always going to tell you like, you got to do the multifaceted approach. So
Yeah.
make sure it's not just the television, but maybe you've got some radio in there as well, and you also have the digital components.
Well, and then, just I guess adding to that, that you've thought through how you're going to measure it and you're going to understand, did it work? Was this investment worthwhile? Should we do it again next year? And particularly when you're talking about these events where you're making this placement and you're getting all of these eyeballs, have a call to action in your creative so that you, again, can say, like, did we drive the traffic? Did they buy the thing? Can we in any way look at data to understand, did this bring the value that we, monetarily invested from our ad spend?
Yeah. And that will be a great way to, make future determinations. So
Yeah.
Always.
Because you don't want to just do things this year because it's the way you've always done it. It's almost always the wrong answer.
This is the year to break free from the constraints of what you've always said.
Yeah.
And try something new.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up live, unless you have any parting thoughts.
Not right now. I will later, but not at the moment.
Well, thanks for joining us again for this episode of Beyond the Buy. And what are we talking about next time?
I find out.
Yeah, you will find out when you join us.